Um, Hi classmates, this is the pre-recorded video of my report regarding the assessing the possibility for errors, fraud, and illegal acts. So dapat continuation ito ng report ni Ian under general planning. But since hindi ko siya na-report ng maayos, gumawa na lang ako ng um, pre-recorded video para ma-explain ng maayos. So, assessing the possibility for errors, fraud, and illegal acts. Ang book na ginamit ko na reference dito is itong book ni Lakaza and konting reading sa book ni Salazar Col. So, ang auditing standards na ginagamit ng auditors to assess the possibility of errors, fraud, and illegal acts ay ang PSA 240 or the auditor's responsibility to consider fraud in an audit of financial statements and PSA 250 or the consideration of laws and regulations in an audit of financial statements. So, errors. Error is an intentional misstatement in the financial statements, including the omission of an amount or disclosure. So, since ang error is unintentional siya in nature, mahirap mag-specify ng situations kung saan pwede siya mag-arise. So, ang common na example ng error ay ang mathematical or clerical mistakes in the accounting records, incorrect accounting estimates arising from misinterpretation of facts or oversighting or your overinterpretation, and mistake in the application of accounting policies. So, in the contrary, ang fraud naman refers to intentional act by one or more individuals involving the use of deception to obtain an unjust or illegal advantage. So, yun yung pinagkaiba nila ng error at fraud. Yung kung intentional ba siya or unintentional. So, ang fraud, dapat ang auditor mag-consider siya ng factors na maaaring mag-influence sa risk ng fraudulent activities. So, ang fraud is masyado siyang wide na concept. Pero, ang concern lang ng auditor dito is yung fraud na maaaring mag-cause ng material misstatement sa financial statements. So, um, ang fraud maaaring fraudulent financial reporting kung saan pwedeng may manipulation, falsification, or alteration ng records, or misinterpretation or intentional omission of the effects of transaction from the records or documents, pwede ring misappropriation of assets or employee fraud. So dito, ninanakaw ang asset ng entity tulad ng cash, marketable securities, and inventories. Um, Ang illegal acts naman or non-compliance refers to acts of omission or commission by the entity being audited, either intentional or unintentional, which are contrary to the prevailing laws or regulations. So, dapat ang auditor meron siyang enough understanding ng laws or regulatory framework na applicable sa isang entity, and dapat ina-assure niya na yung entity na yun is nagko-comply kasi ang simpleng non-compliance sa regulatory framework maaring malaki ang epekto sa isang entity. For example, yung nag-conduct ka ng business, nag-operate ka, tapos wala ka palang lisensya. So, most likely, mag-stop mag-operate um, yung isang business kasi hindi naman siya lisensyado. So, ang magandang example dito is yung nangyari sa ABS-CBN. So, ang iba pang example ng uh, non-compliance is yung tax evasion, violation of environmental protection laws, inside trading of securities. So, next is circumstances indicating an increased risk of errors or fraud. So, first is analytical procedures, disclose differences from expectations. So, binigay na ni Ian yung overview ng analytical procedures. So, yung trends and ratios is iba yung result sa kung ano yung ine-expect mo na result. So, unreconciled differences between a control and subsidiary record. So, may discrepancy uh, sa records ng controlling records and yung subsidiary records. Confirmation requests disclose significant differences, lack of proper documentation or authorization for transaction. So, yung transactions is unauthorized. Errors known to client personnel not voluntarily disclosed to the auditor. So, yung client mismo ang may alam na may error or fraud doon sa transaction pero siya mismo ang hindi nag-disclose sa auditor. So, maaaring may fraudulent activities na nangyayari. So, circumstances that may indicate an illegal act. So, unauthorized transactions, investigation by governmental agency or payment of fines or penalties. So, ito na yung mga excessive um, expenses katulad ng sales commissions or agents fees na masyadong malaki, large payments to consultants, affiliates, or employees for unspecified services, um, yung unusually large payments in cash or bank cashiers checks, and yung unexplained payments sa mga government employees. Violations of laws and regulations, unexplained payments to government officials, failure to file tax returns or pay government duties and fees. So, ito na yung example yung tax evasion. So, next is identifying and determining the existence of related parties and related party transactions. So, according sa IFRS or IAS 24, a related party is a person or entity that is related to a reporting entity. A person of a close member of the person's family is related to reporting entity if that person has control, joint control, or significant influence over that entity. So, ang pinaka-common na um, related party relationship is yung parent-subsidiary relationship, associates, affiliates, principal owners, directors, officers, including their immediate families. So, ang concern ng auditor when it comes to the existence of related parties sa isang entity is to um, assure that all material related party transactions are adequately disclosed and all related party transactions are recorded to reflect economic substance or form. So, ang disclosure na tinutukoy dito is dapat yung description of transactions, relationships, amount due, including yung terms to or from the related parties are disclosed. So, yung existence ng related parties is indication siya na when it comes to pagplan ng audit or yung pag-conduct ng audit itself, dapat may higher level ng supervision. So, as to scope of work naman ng auditor when it comes to related parties, so dapat yung auditor must obtain an understanding of management responsibilities and the relationship of each component to the total entity, and consider controls over management activities, and consider the business purposes served by the various components of the entity. So next is yung determining the existence of um, related uh, parties. So, di ba yung mga common na related party relationship is yung parent subsidiary, yung binanggit ko kanina. Pero meron pa ring mga related party relationship na hindi masyadong apparent. So to help the auditors in determining whether there is a related parties, so they may perform these following procedures. So, first is review prior working paper. So, dito, para malaman nila kung may mga pangalan ba ng related parties. Review the entity's procedure for identification of related parties. Inquire as to affiliation of directors to other entities. So, hindi lang directors, pwede rin yung mga managers or employees kung may relationship ba sila sa ibang entities or other uh, uh, employees. Then, review the shareholders' records. This is to determine the name of the principal shareholders or, if appropriate, obtain a listing of shareholders from share registrar. Um, then, di ko nasali sa PPT ito. Review minutes of the meetings of shareholders and the board of directors and other relevant statutory records such as the register of directors' interest. Inquire of other auditors currently involved in audit or predecessor auditor. So, pwede ka magtanong, yung auditor, pwede siya magtanong or mag-inquire doon sa mga naging auditors or yung mga auditors, ibang auditors na involved uh, sa entity if may alam silang information about the existence of related parties. Review of entities' income tax return and other documents supplied to regulatory agencies. So, ito rin if para malaman kung meron bang hidden names ng related parties. So, next is um, after ma-identify yung existence ng related parties, ang auditor naman is mag-proceed naman siya sa pagbigay ng emphasis sa pag-test ng material transactions. Um, yun. So, to examine, the auditors may perform the following procedures. So, obtain an understanding of the business purpose of the transaction, examine invoices, executed copies of agreements, contracts, or yung mga hmm, receiving reports or yung mga shipping documents, so pwede din yun. Determine whether the transaction has been approved by the director, so kung authorized ba yung mga transactions. Test for reasonableness the compilation of amounts to be disclosed. So if um, reasonable ba yung mga naka-disclose na information or amounts in terms arranged for the audits of intercompany balance to be performed as of concurrent dates, even if the fiscal years differ, and for the examination of specified important and representative or related party transactions by the auditor for each of the parties with appropriate exchange of relevant information. And next is inspect or confirm and obtain satisfaction concerning the transferability and value of collateral. So, hello. So, continuation ng report ko is potential indicators of related parties. So, ang auditors dapat alam nila or alert sila sa mga potential indicators ng related party issues kasi during the conduct of audit during the conduct of audit yung mga issues na yun may require special attention. So, a key to consider is whether the accounting for the transaction is appropriate given its substance. So, potential indicators of related parties are listed below. So, first off, using agreements under which party pays expenses on behalf of another party. So, dito, ang arrangements na tinutukoy is yung Yung isang party is nag-volunteer siya na bayaran yung expenses ng isang company. But then, they passes back the expenses to the company. So, as a part naman ng company, maaaring indicator siya, maaaring mag-cause siya ng um, understatement sa expenses. So, this should be examined closely kasi um, this could be an indicator of existence of related parties. So next is circular arrangements between related parties. So yung circular arrangement na tinutukoy dito is yung seller is under obligation siya na magbigay ng iba pang benefits sa buyer. So this kind of arrangement should be examined closely. Next is engaging in business deals at more or less than market value. So for example dito, ang isang party is nag-offer siya ng lease agreement sa iba pang party at less than market value. So this kind of relationship should be appropriately disclosed sa financial statement ng company. Next is um, identification or indication of unidentified related party. So, yung auditor, dapat niya alamin if yung hindi pag-disclose ng related party is intentional ba siya or unintentional. Inadequate disclosure. So, dito naman, yung company fails to satisfactorily describe the nature of the related parties, relationships, and related party transactions. So, hindi na-disclose yung nature ng relationships, yung terms and amounts due from the related party. So, payment of services at inflated prices. So, dito naman, yung mga services rendered is paid at excessive prices. Revenue recognition. So, dito, auditor should be aware that revenue recognition is not appropriate when a substantive exchange is not present. Instances of fictitious sales and sales to related parties lacking economic substance have been attributed in the past to management representatives who are anxious to meet sales quotas and earnings performance goals. So yung transaction dito is walang economic substance. Next is sale of land with arranged financing. So, yung arranged financing na tinutukoy dito is halimbawa yung isang party na agree siya na ibenta yung lupa niya sa isang entity for the purpose na ma-maintain yung relationship niya sa isang entity. So, this could be an indicator of the existence of related party and this should be examined closely. So, next is sale of securities. So, dito, yung owner ng securities is binenta niya yung securities niya at fair market value. So, if pag fair market value, maaring hindi siya indicator na may related parties. Pero pag below market value, then uh, dapat i-examine siya closely kasi maaring uh, indicator siya ng related party. Next is sale without substance. So, dito, yung pera, yung funds is pumapasok sa isang company galing sa related party para sa mga goods or services na hindi naman ni-render. Services or goods are purchased from a party at little or no cost. So, dito, nabili yung goods and yung services at prices na below cost or at no cost at all. Next is unusual material transactions, particularly close to quarter or year-end. So, yung unusual material transactions na tinutukoy dito is yung mga maliliit na transactions na wala namang substance. But then, kapag kinumbayin mo yung mga maliliit na transactions na yun, is maaaring may malaking may material effect siya sa financial statement ng isang company. So, particularly close to quarter or year-end, kapag repetitive yung transactions at quarter or year-end,
So these transactions should be investigated for potential related party relationships. And lastly, utilization or related party to mitigate market risk. So dito, ang company and its advisors create a shell company. This is to help mitigate risk on various equity transactions. The nature of the structure established and the details of the related transactions must be adequately disclosed in the financial statements from the time of inception.
So, yun lang ang report ko. And sorry din if late kasi um, mabagal yung signal and hindi kaya ng data mag-upload sa YouTube. So, ngayon lang din nabalik yung internet natin. So, that will be all. Thank you.